Roaring Twenties are often called the Jazz Age, a time when new forms of art like jazz emerged with a distinctly American flair. Anti-war literature, like Ernest Hemingway's The Sun Also Rises, found favor with Americans, as did the writing of F. Scott Fitzgerald, whose Great Gatsby depicted the new American dream of wealth and success, while Sinclair Lewis examined the realities of life in small-town America, revealing its greed and lack of culture. On the stage, groundbreaking playwrights like Eugene O'Neill presented dramas that focused on family conflict and isolation in the modern age. Artists such as Georgia O'Keeffe depicted life in urban America in the 20s. Nowhere was America's uniqueness more evident than in her music. From George Gershwin's instant success with Rhapsody in Blue and Concerto in F, to the phenomenal growth of a truly American musical form, jazz. Jazz was born in New Orleans in the early part of the century, a blend of the blues and ragtime. Migrating African Americans brought this new music to the North, a great many settling in the Upper West Side of New York City in an area called Harlem. Harlem became the center not only for jazz, it became the heart of African American creativity during the Harlem Renaissance. From poets like Langston Hughes to performers like Duke Ellington, to songstress Bessie Smith, who sold 1 million recordings of downhearted blues. By 1927, Smith was the highest-paid African-American performer in the world. Singer, dancer, comedian Josephine Baker, on the other hand, chose to live and work in Paris, spreading the influence of the Harlem Renaissance even to Europe. Women and men found pleasure and entertainment listening to the radio. And for many, radio became their main source of news about the world. Americans were also leaving their homes to find new entertainment at the movies. By 1925, filmmaking had become the nation's fourth largest industry, and there were more than 20,000 movie houses nationwide, many of them elaborate picture palaces. With the advent of talkies, movie attendance doubled. Women also saw a new image emerge for them in the Roaring Twenties, the flapper. Having finally gotten the right to vote with the passage of the 19th Amendment to the Constitution, emancipated women threw out their corsets, high-lace shoes, and dull floor-length dresses. They bobbed their hair and wore short skirts. A woman of the Roaring Twenties also had new choices. She didn't necessarily have to be a housewife anymore. Instead, she could choose whether to marry at all, have children, go to work, or build a career. Marriage became more of a romantic choice. Equality was not prevalent in the workforce, with women usually earning much less than men, even when they performed the same job. Medical schools went so far as to impose strict quotas on the number of women allowed to enter. Americans were also reading. 8 million more Americans were reading newspapers by the mid-20s, many enjoying tabloids and magazines that featured sensational stories about gangsters and entertainers. By the end of the decade, 10 magazines had circulations of more than 2 million. Literacy was on the rise. The number of people attending high school had quadrupled since 1914, and high school was no longer just for college-bound students. Americans also discovered the pleasures of watching professional sports. From baseball's Leroy Satchel Paige to boxing's Manasseh Mauler Jack Dempsey. Entertainment of all kinds became part of the legacy of the Roaring Twenties, as Americans spent over $4.5 billion on entertainment, much of it on pastimes and fads. Some of those fads, like flagpole sitting or dance marathons, seem so silly now. These images of an almost adolescent America, finally free of the fear and drudgery of war, are how most people view the Roaring Twenties. And in fact, it was a brief period of relative prosperity. Unfortunately, despite the outward appearance of stability, the American economy was crumbling, and by late 1929 would be brought to its knees by the start of the Great Depression. But until the stock market crashed, the 20s were indeed roaring.